quite a lot of exciting content that Mo will be sharing today with all of you. Really excited about that as well, because as I shared, myself having freelance for the last more than 12 years, finance, taxes is something I really, really do not enjoy doing. I think more than that, I also do not enjoy after I file my taxes when you get to hear that, oh, you could have expensed those things. And, then you're like, oh, okay, next year maybe. And then again, it repeats. So hopefully, Mo will be sharing a lot of exciting tactics, but also maybe some neat hacks. I don't know. I might be giving away some of his secrets. Okay. Oh, yeah. So we see people from Toronto, Montreal, quite a few others joining in. So I'll get started. Really excited, to have a friend of our community. Mo has been a part of DesignX since almost the beginning. Maybe he can, when he joins in, he can correct the timeline. But I remember him joining from when we were in the few hundreds. So from quite early on, and a really active member of the community as well. I do recall that he, of course, was a designer working in the Toronto tech community as a designer. Really exciting to see what he's up to now. So short form, I refer to him as Mo, or many people do. But Mohammed Asaduallah, he is the co-founder and CEO of Benji. Benji is an online service that finds tax write-offs for Canadian freelancers by sifting through their bank transactions. Mohammed is also the executive director of Women in Color. It's a federal nonprofit that creates opportunities to advance and amplify subject matter experts from underrepresented groups in tech. Mo is also a really, really active member in the overarching tech community in general. So I'm sure he will be bringing a wealth of his experience and knowledge to what he's sharing today, all around managing your finances as a freelancer. So before we bring Mo onto this virtual stage, I am not sure how many of you are already coming through the DesignX channels. We do not, do a data tagging to that detail, but I'll share a quick snippet of what DesignX is for those of you who might be, this might be your first time coming to one of our events in person. So DesignX, our community started about 3.5 years ago in Toronto primarily, but over the years, we've grown to a large global community of 5,000 plus members on DesignX. And then another 1,200 plus design leaders in our design leadership community. The overarching goal of DesignX has always been to elevate design as a discipline and designers as a community across the globe. And we do it using quite a few channels. So, we have two major Slack communities. We have the DesignX community, which is an intersectional design community open to designers across all geographies, across all experience levels. And then we have a more niche community focused specifically towards design leaders on designleadership.io, and it's called the Design Leadership Community. In our community, apart from the Slack groups, we also host a lot of events and workshops. We used to host, this slide used to be covered in more in-person meetup photographs, which hopefully will be back soon. But till then, we are not letting that COVID-19 and everything else that's going on stop us from continue to foster the community. So still going ahead with our virtual meetups. We recently wrapped up a massive virtual conference on design called Remote Design Week. We have another one coming up next month, which I'll share towards the end of the talk. Apart from our Slack community and the events, we also focus a lot on building community resources. So if you go to our website, designx.community, we have a full-on job board. You can post a job even for free on the job board. We have a weekly newsletter that you can sign up for to get all the highlights from our Slack groups, any kind of neat resources that are shared in the community. We also recently compiled a whole conference directory on our website. So if you go to designx.community/conference-directory, you can sift through a lot of conferences happening across the globe, which have been updated with their latest virtual status, as well as pricing and all those other neat things. A lot of this, is possible because of some incredible support from our partners. So big thank you to our friends at Intersect. Intersect is one of the leading product and digital agencies in Toronto, so really thankful for the support. in helping us continue to foster the community. You can learn more at weareintersect.com. And as Mo will be sharing a lot of exciting tactical insights and wealth of knowledge. If you are sharing it on social, please do tag us. Our Twitter handle and Instagram handle is at @WeAreDesignX. On LinkedIn and Facebook, you can just search DesignX Community, and you can use the hashtag DesignX Virtual Chats. So before we get started, it's 4:10. Most content is about 40 minutes. So we will try and end around 4:50. And I'm sure there will be a lot of questions that folks will have, because some of these things can be so contextual to your circumstance. Mo has offered to help answer I don't know how many questions, but he'll try to answer or help as many people as he can. So if you are part of the DesignX community Slack group, we will be taking Q&A in our side projects channel, which is also a channel for freelancing and any kind of things you're doing on the side. But even if you are like going full-time into being a freelancer right now, if you are not part of the Slack community, comment into the in the chat. I'll share the link to join our Slack group again. I'm not sure if we'll be able to verify you this soon, but any neat insights that come out of the Q&A, we'll try and share with the overarching community through our newsletter as well. So let's have a big virtual round of applause for Mohammed Asaduallah joining us today to talk all about managing finances as a freelancer. Hey, Mo.
Hey, thanks for that. It's interesting to see how this is all set up.
I can hear the applause.
Oh, there is applause? Okay,
I
awesome. Know. I'm sure we'll go into the Slack channel after, and there's going to be like hand clap emojis.
Yeah.
This is really cool to see everything.
I should have plugged in. I should have plugged in some like applause sounds.
Oh, like the virtual.
Yeah.
That actually will be hilarious. But thank you so much for having me. I guess I take it up from here and just kind of go into the topics of discussion today. So let me get started. Okay, before we get started, I just want to make sure I do some housekeeping. If you have questions, please add it to the chat. If you're tuning in from YouTube, LinkedIn, there's multiple different options. You can chat through and we kind of get a seamless response all in the chat area here. But you can also add your question to Slack as well. And I'm there, so I'll also be able to look into that and contact you there as well too. Now, I'll try and go through as many of the questions as possible, but there will be times where I actually don't know something. I don't have the answer for it, or I don't know something in full detail. And at that point, I'll just have to get back to you on that. And for those who may be strapped for time or may have something come up, please know it's completely okay if you need to leave for any reason. And as for those who perhaps don't feel comfortable asking their question publicly, you can DM me directly at HeyMosif. It's the same handle on Slack as it is on Twitter, Instagram, and other places. So getting started, a little bit about me. As Preet mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Benji. We find tax write-offs for Canadian freelancers. I'm also the executive director of Women in Color. It's a nonprofit that has been now up and running for well over 4 years. And the best way for you to get in touch with me would be Twitter and LinkedIn. Although if you're going to add me on LinkedIn, please add a note. Don't just like add me with no context, because I won't know who you are and I'll probably ignore it, because LinkedIn is getting a little spammy right now. Before we get started, I do want to remind a few things. I'm not a registered accountant or tax professional. All of these insights that I'm sharing are based on my personal experiences and things that I've learned by talking to experts. And I obviously have certain biases, such as I'm not a big fan of banks, at least most banks. So I do want you to keep all of this in mind as I go through all of this, and be critical of everything that I say, but also any advice around finances and taxes that you receive from others as well too, especially if it's somebody who works for a bank. So getting into the nitty-gritty of today, we'll be talking about understanding your monthly spendings, understanding how you can prepare for the unknown, then looking at how you can pay your debt in a smart manner, and then how you can start building up savings while also looking into then plan for your future. You'll notice that I have making money near the end, and it'll make sense when I get to that part of it. And then, of course, I know a number of people I had asked about paying their taxes and just what is it like to do your finances as a freelancer, which essentially is this whole, I guess, event today. So I'll try and get through all of this as quickly as possible because there is quite a bit. It's essentially going to be the crash course for freelancers and your finances. If I miss something or if something doesn't make sense to you, please, again, add your questions and I'll try and get back to them. And you can also reach out to me. So looking at calculating your monthly spend. A lot of times we don't really have an understanding of what's going on with our money. And because we haven't yet taken the time to actually map out our monthly spends. Most of us are focused on getting our clients to pay us. And that's even if we've decided to go ahead and actually send that invoice, because I know a lot of people have a hard time just sending the invoice to their client. So now that you have the money in and everything, where is your money going? Like, what's going on? So let's take a look at your bank statements for the last 4 to 6 months. Try and make note of, what you're spending on, what are monthly expenses, what are one-off expenses. Also try and keep track of where you're spending cash. So for example, before I decided to shave down, you probably saw my beard in the photo, I was going to a barber and my barber only takes cash. So that was one place I was spending cash. And then also be mindful of what your annual renewals are. So an example of that might be your condo or home insurance renewal. So once you've kind of get a better understanding of where your money is going, you can start getting a sense of like, oh, look, this is kind of like the basic minimum I need to make sure I'm making as a freelancer to be able to cover all of my expenses. Now, this sounds kind of a very strange thing to get us started off, but that's where this slide comes in, which is that I've put together a monthly finances spreadsheet that I'll share later in the Slack channel, but essentially it's a Google Doc that you can make a copy of and be able to go through it yourself and fill it out. I've even created certain rules in it. So this way, if you're collecting sales tax, it'll automatically calculate that for you, as you can see here. And depending on your marginal tax rate, you can also enter that and also calculate how much income taxes or how much money you should be setting aside for income taxes. So this monthly finances spreadsheet is going to help you be able to really start getting a sense of what's happening with your monthly expenses. So I like to make things very tactical, and you'll notice that every section that I'll cover here, we're going to have very clear action steps about it and go through each one of them. So first thing I'll say for those who are tuning in, once I share this link with you, please go ahead and make a copy of this monthly finances spreadsheet, update it with your financial details, and get a better understanding of where your money is going. And for those who already have something like this, that's awesome. That's great, because as we start going into the next few parts of this talk, you'll start seeing how this monthly finances spreadsheet is really going to come together. Okay, so next thing, preparing for the unknown. And what do I mean by that? Your computer stops working, you break up with your partner, and now you need to move out. Rent, at least in Toronto, I can't speak for everywhere else, is not the cheapest. So being able to have the first and last month deposit can get very expensive very quickly. Or perhaps maybe you're unable to work because you got sick. We have a pandemic happening right now, and if you are somebody who's affected by it, it can be really difficult for you to make sure that you're able to even cover just your basic expenses. So that's where you need to start thinking about, like, what are all the things that can go wrong for your scenario, and start mapping that out. So typically, money experts or just people in general say, hey, put aside 3 to 6 months of your monthly income. I personally prefer to recommend having 6 months of your monthly expenses aside. So the difference for that is that just because you have a certain amount of income coming in doesn't mean it's covering all of your expenses. So it's better to focus on the expense part of it and try and create a pathway for yourself for those 6 months. And look, I understand that 6 months sounds daunting, but you have to start somewhere. So it's okay if you start with having 1 week's worth, having 2 weeks worth, and building up to getting to that 6 month mark and then beyond. Because the only thing that I can say is that shit goes wrong, and that's why we have insurance. But for freelancers, we don't really have something as in the sense of like income insurance other than EI and similar government offers or programs. So it's better to equip yourself and protect yourself really by having this money stashed aside for yourself. And again, as I'm saying this, everyone's situation is different, but it's always best to plan for the worst. So here's how you can get into that part of it. You can go to RateHub. This is specific to Canadians, but for Americans, there are similar versions of it. I'm forgetting the name of it, so that's my fault for that. But there are, you just type in, compare bank accounts, compare savings accounts on Google, and you'll find one for every region that you're in. But for those here in Canada, consider opening up a high interest savings account. That's what HISA is, if you've heard that word before. And you can do that on RateHub for free. There's no cost to you, and you can immediately see what the different rates are. But before you go ahead and open it, I actually advise you to go to Drop and see if they're running any promotional offers, because you'll see Drop will have offers with EQ, Drop will have offers with like Sun Life, Drop has like all these different offers. So check there first once to see if the high interest savings account that you want to open with a bank or with a financial institution is also offering a promotion, because this way you can get Drop points as well as getting the job done that you wanted to anyways. And that's a little hack I recommend, and it's something I do a lot of the times. The other thing I do want to note when you are reviewing things on a site like RateHub is don't get caught up on chasing promotional rates. A lot of these banks and financial institutions will say, hey, we're going to give you like a high interest rating, like 2.5%. But when you read the fine print, it's only for the first 5 months. And even then it's limited to $200 or $1,000 or something of that sort. So, that's when some people try and get clever, and it's like, okay, well, I can do 6 months at this account. I'm going to go do another account for 6 months. And they just kind of get caught up and start doing all this work that they don't really need to. I prefer to keep things boring. Just find one that you think has a good rate, even after the promotion rate is over, and make that your high interest savings account that you can then start putting this money into. The other thing I do want to caution you is to look at, when you are looking at RateHub, to make sure that the financial institution is CDIC insured, and that's for Canada specifically. But all really it's trying to say is that if something happens to this financial institution, that you're insured up to $100,000, that your money is protected. So we've heard of recessions happening, banks going under, and people losing their money. This CDIC insurance is essentially insuring your money that way. So this way, should something happen, your money is protected. There are certain institutions that will provide you a higher rate, and you'll say, oh, this has a higher rate. What's going on? It's likely because they don't have CDIC insurance. So be careful about that. Now, once you've figured out which one you're going to go with, maybe there's an offer on Drop, it is CDIC insured, you go ahead and open it, and then you can set up automatic transfers. And I say if feasible because I recognize right now it might not be feasible for you to start building up this emergency savings account. You might still be trying to just manage your monthly expenses as they are, and that's okay. Once you have the capacity, then consider setting up this automatic transfer and start building up your emergency fund that way. As you do, be sure to set up, update your monthly finances spreadsheet. Remember how I said like that spreadsheet is going to come in handy again? This is what I'm talking about. Every part we're going to go through, it's going to have something to do with that financial spreadsheet. Now, talking about paying off your debt. I understand this is quite a big topic for a lot of people, and we all have some kind of debt. In fact, most Canadians and Americans have a lot more debt than they are able to even make in their lifetime, which is definitely concerning. So for me, I like to recommend that you review your credit cards, if you have loans, if you have line of credits, look at all of that. And then on top of that, start writing down what you owe, and also start making note of what are the interest rates you're paying on it. And the reason why I say this is, well, I don't have a screenshot of it in here, but in that same spreadsheet that I've shared with you, actually, I think I can probably just exit this here and just kind of go through it and show you. So here's the spreadsheet that I was talking about, the monthly finances spreadsheet, because I keep talking about it, but it's better if you see it. So you'll notice I've filled it up with a whole bunch of information here, and you can remove and add whatever it is that you feel is necessary. You'll also notice that I've also created a part here for sales tax. So if you are in a province or state that has a higher sales tax, you just update it here, and you'll notice your amount automatically change here. Same thing with your combined marginal tax rate. If you don't know what that is or what yours is, you can go to this site or Google it, and you'll be able to find out what it is for your province and the federal, or your state and federal. Now, the debt part, which is why we came here, is this. So you can come into this part of the spreadsheet, add, like however much money you have, whatever interest amount you're paying, and whatever monthly payments you're making, to get a sense of like how long it'll actually take you to pay it all off, but then also get a sense of like how much has that cost you? Like what is the cost of that? And that's where having it all here is going to be very visually helpful. But then to my point here, if I go back into presentation mode, to my point here, excuse me, is that as you start looking at your interest rate, you start getting an understanding of like where your money is going. And now you have a spreadsheet to kind of get a sense of everything that's happening. And you can start getting a sense of like where you should start paying off. So when it comes to debt, make more than minimum payments if you can. Again, I say these things because I understand not everyone's financial situation is the same. And if you have a credit card that, you're paying $200, but you're spending $400 every month, try and limit that also if possible, because everyone's scenario is different. And then the one thing that I like to tell people is that if you have a line of credit and a credit card, and your credit card has, let's say, $10,000 debt on it, and you have a line of credit that's $10,000 or $20,000, and it's not being utilized or not being used, it's better to pay off your credit card with the line of credit, because chances are the credit card you have has a high interest rate, probably 19.99%, whereas your line of credit might be anywhere from 7% to 10%, or lower, higher, depending on your own scenario. Now, the other thing I do want to add here as well, as you'll notice, is that do not rush to close your credit card as soon as you've paid off the credit card with the line of credit. And the reason for that is very important, is because when you let me explain. It's going to affect your credit card, and the reason why it's going to affect your credit score rating is because credit score rating is made up of multiple different touch points or pinpoints, and part of that is essentially looking at if you have $10,000 worth of credit available to you combined. Okay, this is your credit card, your line of credit, all of that. If you have $10,000 available and you use up $4,000 between multiple different credit products that you have, then you've used up 40% of the credit that's available to you, right? It's credit utilization, that's what it's called. Now, imagine if you moved $4,000 from your credit card to your line of credit, you still have 40% credit utilization. However, if you close your credit card that had a credit limit of $4,000, now $6,000 credit's available to you, and your credit utilization went from 40% to 80% because you're using $4,000 out of the $6,000 that's available to you. So be mindful of that before you decide to go ahead and start closing things. That's why I have that. It's such a small detail, but not many people know this, and most people don't even share this or disclose this unless you go talk to someone and start asking them specifically about this. So be careful of that. And for those of you who have a lot of debt and are also investing at the same time, I personally recommend that you stop investing and start focusing on paying off your debt, because the amount of interest you're going to pay on your debt, I'm not sure you can be that confident that you're going to be able to make that money back through your investments, right? And I'm assuming if you have investments, you're likely planning for the future. So if you're planning for the future over the long term, but you have this debt that you're also going to carry through with you, is the trade-off really there? I don't think so. It's just better to clear off that debt, then look at investing after. So action steps. Check your credit score. And you can do this free with Borrowwell. I'll share the link as well too. I have all these links available for you. And for those in the US, there are similar services that are available to you. Credit Karma is one of them. I personally don't recommend Credit Karma anymore, and that's because they recently got acquired by Intuit, and I don't trust Intuit as a company. Again, this is just one of my biases that I'm being clear about and I have reasons for it, you can Google it. That's up to you. Now, once you've checked your credit score, you can actually go into a bank and actually negotiate the interest rate you're paying on your line of credit or your low interest credit card, whatever else it is. A lot of people don't know that they can actually get a better interest rate on an existing thing that they're paying interest on. And what I mean by this is that you check your credit score, you have a credit score about, let's say 720 or higher, you have decent income coming in, you can then go to your bank or maybe even give them a call actually and ask to get a better interest rate on your line of credit, on your mortgages, on your low interest credit cards, anything essentially where you have that variable mortgage or essentially variable interest rate, you can get that negotiated. Now, there will be times when somebody's gonna be like, no, we don't think so. And don't stop there. You could then go to another bank and essentially ask them, it's like, hey, I'm looking to open up an account. I want to move my stuff over. What is the rate that you can offer me? And chances are you might actually end up getting a better rate there if your existing bank isn't able to provide that. So consider that. It's part of my personal recommendation that has worked a number of times. The other thing you can also look at is amalgamating your debt. And what I mean by that is like, let's say you have $5,000 credit card, you have $6,000 line of credit, you have a $10,000 loan, you have all these different payments that are moving around that all might be unmanageable for you. And that's understandable. It happens to a lot of people. That's okay. Now, what you can do is you can go to a bank and say, hey, I want to pay all of that stuff off and get just one single loan. And you can actually do this. This is not some hack that only people that know do it. Like, it actually is a thing. I worked at a bank during the last financial crisis of 2008, and I've seen a number of people do this with their finances. So go into the bank, you can amalgamate your debt, and the good thing with that is that you'll only have one payment going forward. And because your debt is larger, the amount of interest you're paying on it can actually be lower. It's kind of silly, but you'll notice that the larger the debt becomes, think of your mortgage, the lower the interest rate amount becomes as well. Okay, so without getting too much into that detail, the other thing you can do also while you're amalgamating your debt or just looking to get a loan or anything of that sort is that if you ask for longer payment terms, instead of, let's say, 3 years to pay this off, you ask for 5 years. That's going to lower your monthly payments. So if you've been missing on, if you've been unable to make your payments, or if your financial situation has changed and you're no longer able to pay that, by getting a longer payment term, you can then have lower payments, and then you'll be able to pay that back. And if you are able to make more money before the term is over, you can actually start paying that off faster. Most banks and most financial institutions allow you to just pay that off and close it and not penalize you. There are some that might penalize you a little bit, so you may want to look for that when you're getting that contract set up. The other thing I will also say, if that you're the type of person that's carrying a balance on your credit card and you don't have a line of credit and are unable to acquire one, then consider switching your credit card to a low interest credit card. And that alone can help to bring your interest rates to a much manageable amount and be able to ensure that you're paying more of the money towards the capital. And for those who don't have that consideration, then you can look at getting a no-fee cashback credit card, because it's great for you to get cash back. Because let's be honest, I don't know when travel is going to happen again. So it makes no sense for you to have a travel credit card right now. And for most people, cashback is actually a better way to go. The other thing I would also say, which is where the spreadsheet came in handy, is once you have all your debt together, you can then see which debt is costing you the most, and start by paying that one that has the highest interest rate highest interest rate, and start paying that down first, because the highest interest one is the one that's going to start amalgamating. Compounding can work for you and it can also work against you. So it's better to try and pay off the highest interest rate product first and then make your way down. Some people will say, hey, I have only $1,000, but I'm paying 6% on it, and I know I can just pay that off. Why shouldn't I go do that? And the reason, I personally still recommend you pay the highest interest rate product first is because, yes, that $1,000 paying that off is going to feel good right now. But if you look at it objectively from the cost perspective of it, it's that 19.99% debt, let's say, it's going to cost you a lot more than the 10% debt. So it's better to just try and tackle that down a lot faster, because the 10% that's not going to be as expensive over the long term. And of course, update your monthly finances spreadsheet. Once you've gone through all of this, you've kind of got a better understanding of where what your credit card debt is, your line of credit, any of that. Start updating your finances spreadsheet and be able to start seeing, like, okay, what's going on with my money? What are my contributions looking like? And be able to get a better sense of like what you're left with at the end of each month and how that's going to tie in with your overall finances. And I'll get into that as well further on. Okay, that took a bit of a time, but now let's talk about savings. When I think about savings, a lot of times we think about, okay, I have to save up for, my future. I have to save up for my wedding. And I like to think of savings as something that is essentially a lot more short-term. And the reason why I like to think about savings in that manner is because savings account generally don't pay you enough interest for it to even sit in the bank. Like right now, even if you get 2% interest from a bank, from a high interest savings account, inflation is 2%, so you're practically not really making that much money, and it just kind of offsets itself. And that's okay. But you can look at savings in a different way. It's like, what are the things that you can get or want in the near term? And near terms, I look at it around 6 months to 12 months. It can be a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on your scenario. You can be buying a new laptop, or you want to get a new mic. You want to take a word for your vacation. I don't know when the borders are going to open up, but you still want to have plans for that. Or maybe you just want to treat yourself. And that's completely okay. It's fine to save up money to then go shopping and feel good. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to be ashamed of, to take your savings and spend it. It's okay, because that's what you were saving up for, right? So long as you have a purpose for your money, and then you follow through on that purpose, it's completely okay. There is nothing to feel guilty or ashamed about. That's what you intended it to be, right? So let's keep that in mind. So I like to tell people to stash that cash. And again, it is not the same as your emergency fund. I highly recommend you use a separate savings account. And it doesn't even have to be a high interest savings account. It can just be like a regular interest account that is available, because that money's not going to sit there anyways. It's going to be used up in 6 to 12 months. And that's fine. You just need something that you can put aside your money into, because you will have certain goals that you want to put that money towards. So action steps: determine what you want to save up for. Open that savings account. Set up automatic transfers if feasible. Again, not everyone's situation is different. And for some of you that are at a bank or financial institution that has a roundup feature, you can also turn that on and make that a way to, instead of automatic transfer, or in addition to automatic transfers. So that the consideration is there for you as well too. And again, update your monthly finances spreadsheet, because as you start going through this and start updating that spreadsheet, you're going to get a much better view about what's happening with your finances as a whole, and then be able to make better decisions about your financial future. Financial future, that sounds pretty cool. Sorry, the branding brain never turns off. So planning for the future. What is the future you want for yourself? Are you looking to buy a house? Do you have plans to get married? Weddings are so expensive. Oh my God. And having kids, daycare in Toronto, it's so expensive. Perhaps you want to retire early or just travel around the world, right? What is the future you want for yourself? A lot of the time people talk about, hey, I want to be rich. But when you start asking them, it's like, what does that mean to you? You will notice that everyone's response to that is so different. Everyone has a different meaning of what it means to be rich. So understand what it is that you want for yourself, and then focus on achieving those goals. Don't try and just go into this with like, I'm just going to like have a future, like have a purpose, right? And then strive towards it. So what does investing in your future look like? I recommend starting with what you can afford. That's where your expense spreadsheet is going to come in handy. You will have a better understanding of what you can actually afford. That said, a lot of people get concerned. They're like, oh, I don't have hundreds of dollars. I don't have thousands of dollars. Like, no, you don't need that much money. You can start with as little as $5 per month, a week, every other week, whichever you prefer. The one thing I do recommend, though, is that you stay away from high fee investments. And those are typically mutual funds that are 0.5% or higher. And like everyone pays fees. So it's not that there are no such thing as never pay fees. Everyone's paying fees. It's just making sure that you're paying the lowest possible for you. Okay. If you have a mutual fund, go and look at what your management fee is there, and you'll notice it actually might be 1% or 2%. So at that point, you might want to start looking at it. It's like, okay, should I just sell this and move this over? We'll get into that a little bit later. The other thing I would say is like, don't get caught up in trading. I know trading is like so sexy because there's constant movement involved. It's like an action movie with Fast and Furious where Vin Diesel's like jumping over a bridge onto a car and like somehow just not even have a scratch on him. Like trading makes no sense to me. I like to keep things boring, focus on the long term. Just don't try it and like know the stocks or this cannabis this or Bitcoin that. Just focus on keeping things boring for your future and focus on that long term. I recommend starting with RRSP. And for those in the United States, this would be your 401k or your, I forgot the name, but essentially it's for your retirement vehicle that you can be using. And that's what you want to use. And the reason why I recommend starting with RRSP is because every time you put money into your RRSP, you get a tax credit. And then this way you have to pay less in taxes when tax time comes around, or you get a tax return or a tax credit back, which is great. Where with the TFSA, which is what we have, tax-free savings account in Canada, there might be a similar version of it in the US. It's where you put money in and anything money that you make in that account does not get taxed. And that's a great idea. However, the reason why I recommend RRSP is because you get that tax credit, which is great to get you started and to reduce your tax or to lower your taxes paid. But then you can also put that RRSP money towards other things. So for example, you can take out up to $25,000 out of your RRSP to buy a home as a first-time home buyer. I think they might have bumped it up to 35 now. I'll have to check. But there's many other reasons why RRSP is better just to get started on that sense. But look into TFSA later. So action steps. Open an investment account if you don't have one already. You can open up one with Wealthsimple if you're in Canada. I am very much encouraging of Wealthsimple. I'm biased in that saying because I've been a user for them in the very early days. And even then, I've been in their TV commercial as a result of telling my story about how I started using Wealthsimple and became the first person in my family to buy a house in Canada, which led to that opportunity to be in their commercial. And again, I'll share the link with Wealthsimple. So this way, you can get $10,000 managed free for the first year that you sign up versus $5,000 because that's the affiliate link that we have. Now, once you open up that investment account, start contributing to your RRSP, right? Set up automatic transfers if applicable and feasible for you. And I generally say this and like to people I know, but I'll say it to you all. It's like to just set it and forget it. Like, don't even download the app. Like maybe download the app because you want to open up your account or just go to the website, whatever. But after that, you don't need to like log in. If somebody's telling you, hey, the Dow index is down, it's like, okay, so what? Like I have my automatic transfers going in and I don't need to worry because I am going and planning for the future. Like your window is, 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, not the next 3 months, which is what most traders tend to have their windows be, right? Because they get evaluated on a quarterly basis. But that's another topic I won't get into. And again, update your monthly finances spreadsheet. So this way you can start seeing how your finances are evolving and be able to make better financial decisions. Now, I went through all of that and came back to making money. And let's talk about money then, right? Where's your money coming from? Most of you are here because you have some sort of a side business or you're working freelance full-time, and that's of interest to you. Perhaps you also have some savings accounts that are paying you interest. Maybe you have some stocks or index funds that are paying you dividends. Great. Maybe you have passive income, and I say passive because it's very time-consuming and it requires a lot of time and effort to get to a point of getting passive income for most of us. Unless you have like a magic trick, if you do, please share it with me. I won't tell anybody. But otherwise, passive income is not really that passive, but perhaps you have some. And another thing is tax returns. Like if you file your taxes and you get a tax credit back, that's great. That's actually another form of money coming into your bank account. Technically one that is owed to you, but it's still money coming in. And some of you might be getting government credits as well too. So there's a GST credit, there's the Ontario Petroleum credit. There are multiple different credits, at least in Canada, that are available. I can't speak to all things in the US. So there is money coming from, but then what? Look at money or your money coming in from freelance work, and then start to see like how you can pay yourself a salary. Because a lot of times we'll have one big project that's kind of going on, and maybe we're getting paid monthly, but maybe it's in portions where it's like 30% upon agreement, 30% about like drafts completed, 30% mock-ups done, and then the remaining 10% on project completion. And that can be the scenario for a lot of people. But what if you took that money, put it into a savings account, let's say, and then every month you paid yourself a salary? And that gets you in the habit of having that consistency, but also getting a sense of like, okay, I need to fill up my cash bucket up again, because otherwise I might not have a salary next month or next week, whichever it is that you set up. But something that you can get into, a behavior that you can build for yourself to get a better sense of like how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, and what are you left with on an ongoing basis. The other thing I will say is also review your monthly expenses. You have that spreadsheet that we've been talking about this whole time. Now you can start looking at a spreadsheet to be like, okay, what is the amount that I need to make at the minimum to get by? Because then once you have that kind of insight and understanding, then you can be like, oh, I actually need to increase my rates to be able to get to this kind of lifestyle that I want, or this kind of just be able to pay my minimum amount, right? And that's when you want to, every time you get a new client, you reassess your prices. A lot of time people are like, oh, reassess your prices, 6 months, 12 years, new year, new prices. No. I say reassess your prices with every new client, because with every new client, you've learned something from the past client. You've built new skill sets. So what's keeping you from increasing your prices even, let's say, 5% more, right? Nothing's stopping you. There's nothing keeping you from sharing a higher price with one client than another, because at the end of it, that client might be like, okay, that sounds good. Or they might want to negotiate anyways and then bring you down to what it was before, but they don't know that, right? They just think that they're getting a better rate, but from your standpoint, they're making what they were. So consider that as well too. Now, a lot of you probably are also making an hourly rate, so stay away from that. To try and get to more project-based, that's another topic. The other thing I also want to say is that you don't need to register a business to start making money to be a freelancer. So many people register a sole proprietor or incorporation, and then they go about having to figure out opening bank accounts, having to like have separate banks or checkbooks for that, or having to completely manage that separately, and then have to pay more to file taxes and everything for that. It's just better to start with just yourself, who's making money under your own name and getting paid, and that's completely okay. There is a complete different form for that you fill out to file your taxes, and that's completely fine. And anytime somebody's telling you to register for GST, HST, like be careful of that. Like you don't need to get a GST, HST unless you're earning 30K or more, right? At least in Canada. And for that, like if you're not getting to that, or if you're not sure if you're even going to get to that, that's okay. You don't have to worry about registering it now. If you get close to it, let's say you're at 29,500 and the client you've just taken on is going to push you over, that's when you can go and register a GST. It's pretty quick to do. But in the meantime, you don't need it, because then you have to start calculating, keeping track of all the sales tax. Again, leading to that is to report all of your income. There's a number of freelancers I've talked to that say, hey, my accountant told me that if I make $10,000, I don't have to report that income. That is a myth. Do not do that. That's tax evasion. You can get in trouble for that. Report all of your income, because even as you start reporting all of that income over time, you'll also have your own track record to see how well you've been doing over time. But for every income you're reporting, you can also have tax write-offs, which you can then actually use to reduce the amount of taxes you have to pay or get a higher tax credit back. Now, I recognize there's not too much time left, and that's good because I'm almost getting to the end. So let's look at this, right? Review your freelance rates. It's always good to reassess them. Consider getting a no-fee checking account. In Canada, you have Tangerine or Coho. In the US, there's so many more options that are available to you, a lot more than Canada. So please take a look there as well. Identify opportunities to generate passive income. What are things you can do? Could you put together templates that are available through Gumroad for free downloads, or not free downloads, paid downloads? But once you've created that template, that download is available. So all you have to do is market it and get that out, right? So that could be a step towards different ways that you can generate passive income. File your taxes. If you haven't, I'm sure there are a number of people here that haven't filed their taxes. Please go ahead. File your taxes. Perhaps you have to pay taxes. If you're in the US, I think it's the July 15th is the date you have to file by, where for Canada, it was June 15th that we had to file our taxes, but you have until September 1st to pay taxes if you owe any money. And again, update your monthly finance spreadsheet. If your rates haven't changed, if your monthly money coming in has changed, that financial spreadsheet should get updated, as that's going to help you start figuring out what's going on with your money. Now, last part, paying your taxes. I believe in paying taxes. I think we should be paying taxes. I think the rich should be paying a lot more taxes than they do. But that's another bias and consideration and topic we can get into. But taxes pay for a lot of things. The free healthcare we have in Canada, it's thanks to our taxes. But for those who are not sure how to even navigate taxes, it's first thing you can do is actually find out what your combined marginal tax rate is. And there's a link I'll share later that can help you figure that out. But really understand what your combined marginal tax rate is, because then that's how you'll know how much of your freelance income you should stash aside. That's going to be the percentage that's going to help you understand that. And you can then update your spreadsheet to keep track of that. Manage all of your invoices in one place. I know some people that have spreadsheets that have like docs and like Dropbox, all that kind of stuff. Just try and keep things in one place. Use one tool. Wave is a free tool that you can use. FreshBook is a paid one, but there's plenty of other that are also available that you can use. Now, set your money aside immediately for taxes once you know what your marginal tax rate is. So that money goes into a separate savings account and just stays there because you have taxes you need to pay. Keep your receipts for all business expenses. This is specific to Canadians. For the US, you have a certain threshold that you actually don't need the receipts for, which is like, wow, you're so lucky, because keeping receipts gets really annoying. But for Canadians, keep track of all of your receipts. Just take a photo if you have to, in case you lose a receipt, or just put it all in a shoebox. It doesn't have to be coordinated or anything. Just put it all in there, and that's just enough. And if you're making any RSP or charitable contributions, make sure you're making note of that, because you can get tax credits, as I mentioned before, for those things. So open your savings account for your taxes. Get into the habit of immediately putting money into that savings account as soon as you get paid, and then update your monthly finances spreadsheet so you can keep track of what's going on with your money. Of course, I wouldn't just leave you hanging with just all of this info and nothing to do with, and that's where I want to introduce the waterfall system. And this is something that I recently created, and it's how my mind works. I like to think in systems. Typically, you'll see the bucket system, where it's like put 30% here, 10% here, 40% here, and you're like, okay, all my money is just at all times is going to these different things. And I find that kind of frustrating, because, like, why should I be putting money in investments when I have so much debt that is taking up so much of, costing me so much money? I should be putting my money into debt. But because you have a bucket system, you're putting money in investments and debt. And that's just not how I like to think, or what I believe. So I propose the waterfall system. Pay your taxes as soon as you get paid. Remember, put that money aside. Then, because you know what your monthly expenses are, and this is including your monthly loan payments and whatnot, you cover for that. And if all that is covered and you have money left over, start building up your emergency fund. And then if you have a portion of that that's coming along well, great. Now you can start paying down your debt faster, right? So in addition to your monthly payments, you're making additional payments to your debt, and now you're paying that off faster. As that's getting a good handle, you can start putting money towards your personal savings, and then you can go on the trip or treat yourself or whatever it is. And then once that's going really well, you can start investing for your future. This, to me, makes much more sense. But of course, figure out what makes sense to you. Create your own waterfall system that works, and update your monthly finances spreadsheet. So this way you get a clear picture of what's going on with your finances. Wrapping up, calculate your monthly spend, prepare for the worst case scenario, break up with debt, stash that cash, treat yourself as well, invest in your future self, make money for your needs, for your purpose, for your intentions, for your goals, and get ahead of the tax season. And to also get you ahead of the tax season. Shameless plug. If you sign up for Benji, we're offering all DesignX community members 20% off their subscription. Again, as I mentioned, we find tax credits for Canadian freelancers. On average, our users do find $9,387.53 in tax savings. We have a 90-day free trial, so you have plenty of time to try it out. You don't need a credit card for that. Of course, our price is going to go up because we've been out of our beta now for some time, and it's time to start bumping our prices, but that's no catch. Again, I'll share the link for this as well, or actually the link has been on the bottom here this whole time, which is betterwithbenji.com/DesignX, and you can sign up directly through there. I'll wrap up and take any questions if we still have time. Whew. Do I just stay here? Okay.
Incredible. Yeah. Hey, Mo. That was incredibly informative. I think even Chantel was sharing, like, the first time, credit usage has been explained in an understandable way, and so true. I think you shouldn't be a designer. You should have been like a teacher of finance in the schools. Because you spoke like a human, and whenever you're learning about finance, it's like, for me at least, things would just fly off the head. So this was incredibly informative. Yeah, I'm seeing
sweating here.
Yeah,
it's the AC not working. It's like
yeah. No, but that was really incredible. We had a few people asking about, will the session be recorded and distributed? So we will do that. I think a few were also asking more about your spreadsheet.
Yes.
And they were like, can we get access to the spreadsheet on your deck? So, okay. So we will.
Everyone's going to get access to it.
So we will do that, Liza. And then a couple of other thanks coming in for you. A lot of other thanks. Amazing, Mo. We have to go for a meeting, but they'll see you all on Slack. There are a few questions coming in, Mo. Some of them seem like quite nuanced. So there was like a side, not debate, like a discussion going on around, when you spoke about hourly rates versus project rates. Because you could justify it. It depends so much on the arrangement, I would say, that you have with your clients. But yeah, people were talking about different use scenarios around it.
Yeah. So again, I think this one is from Jenny. Oh, hey. So the reason why I try and steer people away from hourly rate is because a lot of the times when you come up, let's say a client, you tell me, hey, Mel, I'm looking for a designer. Can you tell me what your rates are? And then I'll have to be like, okay, it's this much per hour. And then you're like, okay, this is what we're trying to do. And it's like, okay, it's going to take me maybe like 50 to 60 hours. Here's my breakdown. Yeah. And they'll probably turn around. They'll be like, okay, well, I only need this and this. Yeah. So can you do just that for this many hours? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how they'll try and think about it, not looking at your value, not looking at like the end outcome. And anyone who's worked on at least a product design work, there's always scope increase. I've never worked on a product project that has never increased in scope.
Yeah.
So if you've limited yourself to then work on just a certain amount of like hours and be fixed to that, then you're essentially negotiating your value on that like hourly basis.
Right.
Better option is to do it on a project basis. So if you're saying, hey, this is what I believe this project's going to come in, here's where I'm going to cap it at, where like if the things can change, I understand, but if it starts becoming scope creep, then you have to add another rate to it.
Yes.
Other thing that we also recommend to people is actually day rates. So like hourly rates, but the amazing thing about humans is that because we've been able to solve so many problems before, and when we come across another problem, we might be able to figure out the solution in 1 minute, or in a few seconds. Right? Like, let's say somebody's like, hey, I need to redo my website. And in your head, you're like, okay, I already know how I'm going to structure the whole website.
Yeah.
But if you're stuck on an hourly rate, it only takes you 10 minutes, then you kind of left money on the table. When you go in with a day rate and it's like, hey, day rate is a day rate. I don't care if I work 1 hour or if I work 12 hours, that's kind of my rate. And if you need me for more days, then we negotiate it. Then that becomes a good standing point for you to ensure that you're getting your money's for it.
Right. That's a really, really good approach. Yeah, I've kind of struggled with it too myself, and I kind of took the hybrid approach, as you were saying. Like I've done, I used to break down larger projects into sprints. So I would use the agency lingo, and I was like, yeah, it's like, like 4 sprints of 2 weeks each. And if we go beyond, then additional sprint is, so more like a weekly rate, a bi-weekly rate.
Yeah, and that's completely okay.
Right.
It's just don't limit yourself to the hourly. If anything, take a step up to the daily rate of it. And to your point, if a project's going over, that's okay. Just say, hey, if the project goes over scope, then my daily rate kicks in.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And even if the daily rate, you just work like 2 hours, you're still going to get paid for that day rate.
Yeah.
So don't undervalue yourself.
Yeah. Very true. Cool. Thank you so much, Mo. A lot of other, folks, a lot of appreciation coming for your Waterfall System, overall talk. Thanks a bunch. A lot of informative tips. There are a few other people that want to talk a little bit about, different topics like passive income. A few people have been asking, and a few other specific questions around your spreadsheet coming up. So I will, if it's okay, because I see some folks have to bounce off. If it's okay, we can move over to the Slack group, take all the Q&A. You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then we take the Q&A in the side projects channel. Would that be okay? Cool.
Yeah, that's completely fine. You can just add it to the, side projects channel.
Yes.
And if there's questions there that you don't feel comfortable asking in public, you can definitely ping me. I'm available at HeyMosif on Slack, as well as Twitter, Instagram. So get in touch with what makes sense to you. But if it is a question that you think other people will benefit from, I prefer you ask that question in the public channel, so it gives other people the opportunity to learn as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mo. This was really, really, really incredibly informative.
Awesome.
I'm really looking forward to carrying forward this conversation in the Slack group. And for those of you who are still sticking around, Mo will be joining us back again. We are hosting an entire conference on side projects, and freelancing is a big part of it, big component of it. The conference is next month, August 25 to 27. It's a 3-day event. Details are on the website 529.co. So, it's everything you do beyond your 9 to 5. The 3 days, the themes are around ideation, building your side project and then growing it. So you will see Mo back joining us for 5 to 9, talking beyond finances and also going into the nitty-gritties of building a freelance business overarchingly. So, even questions that came up today around how do you price yourself and how do you package your services. So really excited about that. And then let's carry forward the conversations on the Slack group. Big thank you to everyone who joined us, is still tuned in. Thank you so much. It was our first kind of a virtual talks event in this format. We've done webinars previously, but also using a bunch of new tools, learning quite a few things. But we will be doing many more of these quite frequently, which Chantel and I are pretty excited about. So thank you so much, everyone, and we will see you on Slack. Thank you so much, Mo. Thanks again. See you. Bye.